At 35, Ethan Vance wasn't just living the dream. He was the dream. A corporate titan with a fortune built on razor-sharp intellect and relentless drive, he commanded a business empire that spanned across industries. His parties were the stuff of legend, exclusive events held at the most elite rooftop clubs in Manhattan, where only the city's creme de la creme could get past the velvet rope. With an athletic build honed by years of tennis and swimming, chiseled features that spoke of old European money, and an eloquence that could mesmerize any room, Ethan was the kind of man who turned heads everywhere he went, but his heart was already captured. Isabella Sterling wasn't just beautiful, she was breathtaking. An international model and a fashion entrepreneur, Isabella possessed a kind of beauty that seemed sculpted by the gods themselves. Together, they were the perfect couple, ripped straight from the covers of glossy magazines, living a life of glamour and romance that made even the most cynical believe in love. Ethan's perfect world shattered on a seemingly ordinary October morning. He woke up with a bizarre tingling in his legs, a sensation like thousands of tiny needles dancing through his muscles. He brushed it off as overexertion from the previous day's workout, but when he tried to swing his legs out of bed, they simply wouldn't respond. It was the beginning of a nightmare he could have never imagined. 3 weeks later, while driving to a doctor's appointment, a semi-truck blew through a red light and T-boned his convertible. Ethan miraculously survived, but the crash drastically worsened his mysterious condition. After endless tests and consultations with the country's top specialists, the devastating diagnosis came: amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, the dreaded ALS. The doctor explained in a grave voice that it was a degenerative disease that progressively paralyzes every muscle in the body while leaving the mind perfectly intact, a prison inside one's own skin. The life expectancy varied, but it rarely exceeded 5 years post-diagnosis. Ethan, a man who had always been in absolute control, watched his world crumble. In a matter of months, the vigorous man who ran 6 miles every morning was confined to a wheelchair. Soon, even lifting his arms became a monumental challenge. At first, Isabella played the part of the devoted fiancé perfectly. "I love you, Ethan. I'm going to stay with you no matter what," she would vow, holding his weakening hands. But there was something in her eyes Ethan couldn't decipher, a shadow perhaps, or an almost imperceptible hesitation. As the disease worsened, Isabella proposed they get married immediately. "I want to be your wife, Ethan. I don't want to be just a visitor in this house. I need to be here officially to take care of you and manage everything while you recover." Her words sounded loving, but there was a strange urgency in her voice. Ethan's mother, Eleanor, a cold woman who had always prioritized business over family, supported the idea with suspicious enthusiasm. "It's for the best, son. Isabella needs the legal authority to manage your assets while you're indisposed." But before the wedding could happen, Isabella insisted they needed professional help. "Darling, you need specialized care. I'm going to hire the best nurse money can buy." And that's how Chloe Davis entered the story. Chloe was 28 with an expertise that defied her youth. Having lost her father young and raised by a single mother in a working-class neighborhood in Queens, she had fought her way through nursing school while working 2 jobs. She specialized in palliative care because, as she put it, "It's where I can make the biggest difference during the hardest moments of someone's life." When she arrived at the Vance estate on a rainy March morning, Chloe was stunned by its grandeur. Italian marble columns, gardens that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale, a fountain with gilded cherubs, it was another universe. But she was met with pure contempt. Eleanor Vance looked her up and down with unconcealed disdain. You're the caregiver? There must be some mistake. You're too young, too small. My son needs someone strong, experienced." Chloe remained calm, long accustomed to prejudice. "Mrs. Vance, I've cared for dozens of patients with advanced degenerative diseases. I may be young, but I'm strong where it counts, in my heart and my resolve. Please, at least let me meet your son." Eleanor adjusted the Hermes Birkin bag on her shoulder and gestured towards the marble staircase. "Speak to Isabella, his fiancée. I have important meetings. She's upstairs in his room." Chloe found it deeply strange that a mother seemed so eager to flee her own sick son. She walked up the stairs slowly, her eyes scanning the priceless paintings, the sculptures, the overwhelming luxury that seemed to scream the family's power to the world. Isabella appeared in the hallway wearing a fur coat that likely cost more than Chloe's annual salary. She was even more beautiful in person, with perfectly styled blonde hair and flawless makeup, even at this hour. "You're the nurse?" she asked, her voice barely hiding her boredom. "Yes, ma'am." "Chloe Davis?" Isabella didn't even bother to return the greeting. She just turned and walked down the hall. "Come on. I'll show you where he is." Ethan's room was immense, but it was shrouded in darkness. Heavy blackout curtains blocked every sliver of sunlight. The air was heavy, stale, smelling of medicine and despair. Chloe could feel the depression hanging in the air like a toxic fog. Isabella's phone buzzed insistently. She glanced at the screen, and her entire expression changed. "I have to take this. It's urgent. You stay here with him," and she rushed out, leaving Chloe alone in the grim room. For a few moments there was only silence. Then a hoarse, weak voice emerged from the darkness. "Mom? Is that you?" Chloe approached the bed slowly. "No, Mr. Vance. I'm Chloe, your new caregiver." Even in the dim light, she could see his silhouette. The once imposing man was now a frail figure, lost in a sea of Egyptian cotton sheets. "You can leave," he said bitterly. "I don't want a woman taking care of me. It's too humiliating." Chloe was unfazed. Years of dealing with difficult patients had prepared her for this. She walked decisively to the windows and, in one swift, decisive motion, ripped open the heavy curtains. Sunlight flooded the room, revealing Ethan's face for the first time. Even ravaged by illness, the handsome man he had been was still visible. His green eyes, now dull with sadness, instinctively shut against the sudden light. "What are you doing?" he protested. "My job," Chloe answered, her tone firm but not unkind. "You need sunlight, vitamin D. Staying in this darkness only deepens the depression. I'm a professional, Mr. Vance. I'm here to work, and I'll only leave if your mother or your fiancé officially dismiss me." Ethan tried to shift in the bed, but a groan of pain escaped him. Instantly, Chloe was at his side, adjusting his pillows with precise, gentle movements, easing the pressure on his back. Just then, Isabella returned, already wearing a different coat, car keys in hand. "Darling, I have to run. Last-minute meeting with suppliers. She'll take care of you." Without waiting for a reply or even glancing at Chloe, she was gone again. Chloe watched her go with a mix of disbelief and compassion. How could anyone just abandon the person they claimed to love like that? "She has a lot of commitments," Ethan said, as if reading her mind and feeling the need to defend her. "Her business. It's important." Chloe simply nodded, keeping her opinions to herself. She placed her simple bag in a corner and rolled up her sleeves. "Well, Mr. Vance, let's get started. First, I need to review your medication schedule, then we'll talk about nutrition and physical therapy." "Physical therapy?" he scoffed. "In case you haven't noticed, I can barely move a finger." "Passive range of motion, sir. Even if you can't move your muscles voluntarily, we need to keep them engaged to prevent total atrophy. Trust me." And so began Chloe's routine at the Vance mansion. Every day, she arrived at 7 in the morning and left at 7 at night. 12 hours dedicated entirely to Ethan. She bathed him with a dignity that preserved what little pride he had left. She changed his briefs without making him feel less of a man. She fed him with infinite patience when his hands could no longer hold a fork. But Chloe did more than just provide physical care. She talked to him, told him funny stories about past patients, always protecting their identities, read books aloud when he was too tired to hold a tablet. And most importantly, she treated him like a whole human being, not an invalid. One afternoon, as Chloe prepared his medication, Ethan confessed, "You know the worst part of all this? It's not the disease itself. It's watching how people change when you're no longer useful to them." Chloe stopped what she was doing and sat in the chair beside his bed. "What do you mean?" "When I was healthy and rich, well, I'm still rich, but you know what I mean. I had dozens of friends. My phone never stopped ringing. Invitations to galas, dinners, trips. Now," he paused, swallowing the bitterness, "I have 2 true friends left. Chris and Mark. They still visit me every week, even though I'm not the best company." "Those are the friends that matter," Chloe said softly. "The ones who stay when the storm hits." Ethan watched her curiously. "You say that like you know." Chloe offered a sad smile. "My dad died when I was 15. Cancer. It was a 3-year battle. I saw a lot of people disappear from our lives. But I also saw angels show up when we needed them most. And you decided to become one of those angels." "I try to be," she replied, simply. 2 weeks later, Ethan surprised Chloe with an unusual request. "I want to plan a surprise for Isabella. An elaborate proposal with everything she deserves. Chloe felt a strange pang in her chest, a feeling she couldn't identify. But aren't you already engaged? Yes, but I want to do something special. She's been so patient with me. She deserves some romance, even with me like this. Chloe swallowed hard and forced a smile. Of course, I'll help in any way I can. That night, as she was taking Ethan's empty dinner plate to the kitchen, Chloe heard voices coming from the adjoining living room. It wasn't in her nature to eavesdrop, but something in the urgency of the whispers made her stop. How much longer do we have to wait? It was a man's voice, impatient. Patience, Julian. The doctors say it won't be more than a year. 2 at the most. Isabella's voice was cold, calculating, a world away from the honey tone she used with Ethan. And you're sure this is going to work? Of course it will. I marry him, I become his sole heir. When he dies, I get everything. The fortune, the companies, the properties. After that, we can finally be together officially. What about his family? Isabella laughed, a cruel sound that sent a shiver down Chloe's spine. His mother's on my side. She wants her cut of the inheritance, too. As for other relatives, they get nothing if we're married. You're diabolical. That's why I love you. And that's why I have so much fun with you, my love. The sound of passionate kissing followed. Chloe's stomach churned. Her hands were shaking so violently that the plate slipped, shattering on the marble floor with a crash that echoed through the house. What was that? Julian asked, alarmed. Let me check. Chloe heard footsteps and darted into the pantry, hiding behind the door. Isabella entered the kitchen, looked around, and saw the broken pieces on the floor. Her face went pale. Must have been one of the clumsy maids, she muttered, but there was a new tension in her voice. She quickly picked up the largest shards and threw them in the trash before returning to the living room. Chloe waited for several long minutes before emerging from her hiding spot, her heart still pounding. How could she tell Ethan? Would he even believe her? A simple caregiver accusing his perfect fiancé of betrayal and conspiracy? For days, Chloe carried this terrible secret. She watched Isabella arrive, always in a rush, give Ethan superficial kisses, and make up excuses to leave. She saw the love in his eyes and the deceit in hers. It was a silent torture. The situation exploded a week later. Isabella, growing paranoid, decided to set a trap. She hid one of Ethan's Rolex watches and, in front of everyone, including 2 maids and Ethan's mother, accused Chloe of theft. I knew we couldn't trust her, Isabella exclaimed theatrically. Someone from her background left alone with all these valuables. Chloe felt her blood boil. Years of being looked down upon, of watching people like Isabella trample on people like her, it all came flooding out in a torrent of truth. You're cheating on Mr. Vance with Julian. I heard you planning to take his inheritance after he dies. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the grandfather clock in the hall seemed to stop ticking. Isabella, trying to regain her composure, stammered, This woman is lying. She's making this up to get out of being caught for stealing. Ethan, who had been silent, raised his hand, one of the few movements he could still control. Everyone, be quiet. His gaze pierced Isabella like a knife. Where would Chloe get the name Julian if she's never met him? How would she know I've had my own suspicions about him when I never said a word to anyone? Ethan, you can't possibly believe this. This liar. Ethan finished for her, his voice dripping with bitterness. The only person who has actually taken care of me? Who cleans up my waste every single day without complaint? Who treats me like a human being while you can barely stand to look at me? Ethan, please! Out! His voice boomed with a strength no one thought he still possessed. Get your things and get out of my house, now! One of the maids, Mrs. Gable, who had worked for the family for 20 years, stepped forward. Mr. Vance, last night I saw Miss Sterling going through your watch collection. I thought it was odd, but Isabella, realizing the game was up, ran out in a flood of tears. Whether they were real or not, no one could say. Chloe, still standing in the middle of the room, burst into tears. All the stress, the tension, the injustice, it all overflowed. I'm so sorry, Mr. Vance. I didn't want to cause this. I should have kept quiet. I'm so sorry. Come here, Ethan said softly. Chloe approached hesitantly. Ethan, with tremendous effort, managed to lift his hand slightly. She understood the gesture and sat on the edge of the bed. With trembling fingers, he took a tissue from the box beside him. Let me... Chloe tried to take it, but he insisted, raising his hand to her face and, with all the gentleness his condition allowed, wiped away her tears. You saved me, he said simply. You didn't just care for my broken body. You saved my dignity, my future, my life. How could I ever be angry with my angel? From that day on, something fundamentally changed between them. Chloe was no longer just a caregiver. She became his confidant, his friend, the only person Ethan trusted completely. She started bringing music into the room. Discovering his love for jazz and classical, she created playlists for different times of the day. Upbeat tunes for morning exercises. Chopin or Debussy in the afternoons. Miles Davis or John Coltrane at night. You have good taste, he commented one day. I actually researched the artists from your vinyl collection in the study, she confessed with a shy smile. You went into my study? I needed to understand the man I'm caring for. Music tells you a lot about a person. Ethan was touched by her thoughtfulness. And what does my music say about me? Chloe thought for a moment. It says you're a romantic disguised as a ruthless executive. That you appreciate beauty and complexity. That you understand the best things in life require patience to be truly appreciated. Like a fine wine? Like a fine wine, she agreed. Or a Coltrane sax solo. You have to really listen to understand it. They began to have deep conversations about everything. Philosophy, religion, fears, dreams. Ethan discovered that Chloe, a nurse, dreamt of being a doctor. That she was a voracious reader, from romance novels to scientific journals. That she spoke 3 languages because she believed every language is a different way of seeing the world. Why didn't you go to medical school? He asked. Money, she answered simply. My mom's a seamstress. We could barely afford nursing school. But one day I'll get there. And why palliative care? Isn't it depressing, dealing with death every day? Chloe shook her head. I don't see it that way. I see it as a privilege to be present in the most vulnerable and important moments of someone's life. To make a difference when it matters most. Every patient teaches me something about courage, about what really matters. And what have I taught you? Chloe looked him directly in the eye. That strength has nothing to do with muscles. That dignity doesn't depend on independence. And that, she paused, blushing slightly, that it's possible to find light in even the deepest darkness. On a particularly difficult afternoon, when Ethan was in severe pain and even morphine wasn't helping, Chloe did something unexpected. She lay down carefully beside him on the bed and began to hum a soft lullaby her mother used to sing to her. Ethan, surprised, felt the pain begin to recede, as if her voice had a healing power. You have a beautiful voice. Only when no one is listening, she whispered. I'm listening. You're not no one. You're special. The moment hung between them, charged with something unsaid but deeply felt. Weeks passed. The routine continued, but there was a new electricity in the air, a sweet tension they both pretended not to notice. Chloe would dance for him to make him laugh, silly, clumsy moves that drew out his hearty laugh. Ethan would tell her stories of his world travels, describing exotic places with such vividness that Chloe felt like she was there. If you could go anywhere in the world, where would it be? He asked one day. Santorini, Greece, she answered without hesitation. I've always dreamed of seeing the sunset over those white houses with the blue roofs. It's even more beautiful in person, Ethan said. The pictures don't capture the way the golden light hits the Aegean Sea, or the smell of jasmine in the air, or the sound of the church bells echoing off the cliffs at dusk. It must be magical. One day you'll see it, he said with conviction. With what money? She laughed. Life has a way of surprising you, Chloe. One evening, Chloe was getting ready to leave when Ethan called to her. She had showered in the staff bathroom and changed into a simple but elegant blue dress, her hair down and still slightly damp, with light makeup that highlighted her brown eyes. Ethan had never seen her like this. He was used to her scrubs, her hair tied back, no makeup. The transformation left him speechless. Wow, he finally managed. You look different. Chloe blushed. It's my cousin's birthday. We're going for sushi. Boyfriend? She laughed. No boyfriend, Mr. Vance. Men these days are complicated. They'll look, maybe even flirt. But when they find out I'm a palliative care nurse, they vanish. They think it's morbid, I guess. Ethan felt a strange pang in his chest. Was it jealousy? Relief? He couldn't tell. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his head. He groaned, bringing a trembling hand to his temple. What is it? Chloe dropped her purse, all business in an instant. Headache. A bad one. We should go to the hospital. No, just get me a painkiller. You can go to your party. But Chloe didn't go. She couldn't leave him like this. She administered the medication and sat on the edge of his bed, watching him closely, monitoring his vitals. The full moon shone through the window, bathing the room in liquid silver. Chloe was lost in thought when Ethan spoke, his voice thick with emotion. You know what the doctor said at the last appointment? That soon I'll need a ventilator. That I'll lose my ability to speak. That... His voice broke. Why me? What did I do to deserve this? For the first time since she'd met him, Chloe saw tears stream down Ethan's face. Without thinking, she lay down beside him, gently wrapping him in her arms. I don't know why bad things happen to good people, she whispered against his shoulder, but I know your life has meaning, that you've touched so many lives, including mine, that there is still beauty and love waiting for you. Ethan turned his head, his green eyes meeting her brown ones. They were so close they could feel each other's breath. I think I'm falling in love with you, he confessed in a whisper. Chloe froze, trapped by those eyes that seemed to see into her soul. It's just the proximity, the situation. If you were well, living your normal life, you wouldn't even look at me twice. Don't say that, Ethan murmured, and with a monumental effort, he brought his hand to her face. Maybe this disease was a blessing in disguise. Maybe I needed this to find you, to understand what real love is. Mr. Vance, don't call me that, please, just Ethan. Ethan, she whispered, and the name felt like a prayer on her lips. He leaned in, a tiny movement, but one filled with intent. Chloe could have pulled back, maintained her professionalism, but something stronger than reason held her there. Their lips met in a kiss that was gentle and hesitant at first, then deepened, filled with all the unspoken emotions, the shared moments, all the pain and beauty of their unlikely connection. When they parted, they were both breathless. I'm sorry, Ethan said. I shouldn't have. Chloe placed a finger on his lips. Don't be sorry. Never be sorry for making me feel alive. She kissed him again, this time without hesitation, and the world outside ceased to exist. When Chloe told her mother, Sarah, about her feelings for Ethan, the reaction was explosive. Have you completely lost your mind? Sarah shouted, pacing their small kitchen. In love with a dying man. Do you know what that means? It means I found someone special, Mom. Special? He's dying, Chloe. D-Y-I-N-G. You'll devote yourself to him, you'll get even more attached, and when he's gone, because he will be gone, you'll be destroyed. Tears burned Chloe's eyes. You don't understand. No one does. He's not just a patient. He's everything. Everything. Sarah scoffed. And what will everything be when he's 6 feet under? You're young, beautiful, smart. You can have any man you want. Why choose one with an expiration date? Because you don't choose love, Mom. It just happens. Love. Sarah spat the word. This isn't love. It's Florence Nightingale syndrome. You've attached yourself to your patient. It's common, but it's sick. It's not that. Then what is it? Explain to me what kind of future you two have. Chloe straightened her shoulders. Maybe we don't have decades. Maybe we don't even have years. But we will have moments. Real, intense, meaningful moments. And that's worth more than a lifetime of mediocrity with someone I don't love. Sarah shook her head. You're going to regret this. And when you're alone and grieving, don't say I didn't warn you. If you can't support my happiness, then at least respect my choice. Happiness? You call this happiness? Watching the man you love waste away day after day? I call it a privilege. The privilege of being by his side, of making his days better, of loving him for as long as I can. Sarah grabbed her purse, defeated. You're an adult. Do what you want, but don't expect me to applaud this madness. Back at the mansion, the bond between Chloe and Ethan deepened daily. She was no longer a caregiver. She was his partner, his confidant, the love he never knew he needed. Ethan started his physical therapy with a new determination, fighting for every possible movement. Chloe researched experimental treatments, alternative therapies, anything that might offer a sliver of hope. You need to accept it, his doctor said during a checkup. There is no cure for ALS. It's progressive and fatal. Miracles happen, Chloe replied firmly. The doctor looked at her with pity. Miss Davis, I understand the desire for hope, but false hope only makes things harder. It's not false hope. It's faith. Ethan squeezed her hand, one of the few gestures he could still manage. She's right, doctor. As long as I'm breathing, I'm fighting. The weeks turned into months. The disease progressed, but something extraordinary was also happening. Ethan, who had lost all will to live, was now fighting with every fiber of his being. Chloe brought in specialists from across the country, alternative therapists, nutritionists. They tried acupuncture, meditation, radical dietary changes. Meanwhile, their love blossomed in ways that defied logic. Ethan would dictate poems for Chloe to write, love verses that made her cry as she typed. Chloe would create elaborate sensory experiences for him, bringing different flowers each day for him to smell, brushing different textures against the parts of his skin that still had feeling, creating a symphony of sensations to keep him connected to the world. On one special afternoon, Chloe organized a surprise. With the help of Chris and Mark, Ethan's two loyal friends, she turned his room into a private movie theater. They projected his favorite film, Casablanca, onto the wall. Chloe made popcorn, and even though he couldn't eat it, the aroma transported him to happier memories. "We'll always have Paris," Ethan whispered along with Humphrey Bogart, his eyes on Chloe. "We'll always have this room," she replied, kissing his forehead, and then the impossible began to happen. At first, the signs were small. Ethan managed to wiggle the big toe on his left foot, something he hadn't done in months. The doctors dismissed it as a muscle spasm, but Chloe knew better. A week later, he squeezed his right hand into a fist. 2 weeks after that, he slightly raised his arm. The chief neurologist was summoned. He ran every test imaginable. The results were inexplicable. The neural degeneration hadn't just stopped. It appeared to be reversing. "This is impossible," the doctor muttered, staring at the scans. "ALS does not go into remission. Ever. In all of documented medical history, this doesn't happen." But it was happening. Ethan began an intensive physical therapy regimen. Every recovered movement was a monumental victory. Chloe was by his side every second, encouraging, supporting, celebrating each tiny bit of progress. Ethan's mother, Eleanor, reappeared once the news of his improvement spread. She came with documents, fake smiles, and saccharine words. "Son, how wonderful. You're getting better. We need to discuss your future, the company. I brought some papers for you to sign." "Just formalities." Ethan glanced at the documents, transfers of assets, power of attorney, essentially handing everything over to his parents. "Leave," he said calmly. "But son?" "I said leave, and don't come back unless it's to see me as your son, not as your bank account." Eleanor left in a fury, muttering about ingratitude and how that little nurse had poisoned his mind. 6 months after his recovery began, Ethan took his first unassisted step. It was just one wobbly step, but Chloe cried as if he'd just summited Everest. "You did it!" she screamed, jumping with joy. "No," he corrected, pulling her into a hug that would have been impossible just months before. "We did it." The recovery continued, defying all medical logic. Ethan became a case study. Doctors from around the world wanted to examine him, but he had other plans. On a spring morning, exactly 1 year after Chloe had walked into his life, Ethan did something that once seemed impossible. He got out of bed by himself, showered unassisted, and put on a suit that had been waiting in his closet. Chloe arrived for her shift and found the room empty. "Ethan?" she called out, a knot of worry in her stomach. "Out here," his voice came from the terrace. She walked outside and gasped. Ethan was standing, leaning lightly on an elegant cane, but standing. The morning sun lit up his face, which had regained its color and life. He was smiling, that $1,000,000 smile that had won over so many, but was now reserved only for her. "Ethan, you shouldn't be pushing yourself so hard." "Shh," he interrupted. "Chloe Davis, you came into my life at my absolute lowest. You saw past the broken body, past the fortune, past everything superficial. You loved me when I couldn't even love myself." "Ethan," he held up a hand, "please let me finish. I went through hell. I lost everything I thought defined me, my strength, my independence, my pride, but I gained something infinitely more valuable. I gained an understanding of true love. I gained you." With a careful but determined movement, Ethan knelt down on one knee. Chloe brought her hands to her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. "I should be dead. The doctors can't explain my recovery, but I know. It was you. Your love, your faith, your refusal to give up on me. You are my miracle, Chloe." He pulled a small blue velvet box from his pocket. "So I have to ask, will you marry the stubborn man who's already given you so much trouble, but who will love you more than life itself?" Chloe dropped to her knees in front of him, cupping his face in her hands. "Yes, she whispered through her tears. 1,000 times, yes. They kissed right there, on the sun-drenched terrace, two survivors of a storm that was never supposed to have a happy ending. The news of Ethan's miraculous recovery and engagement spread like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone who had vanished wanted back in. Distant relatives showed up with hugs and smiles. Forgotten friends sent effusive text messages. Ethan decided to throw a party, not to celebrate with them, but to make a statement. The mansion's ballroom was decorated with white flowers and golden lights. Everyone who was anyone attended, dressed in their finest, expecting to reclaim their spot in Ethan's inner circle. Isabella made an entrance, looking more stunning than ever in a backless red dress. Julian was nowhere in sight. They had broken up as soon as it became clear there would be no inheritance to steal. "Ethan," she purred, gliding towards him. "You look marvelous. I always knew you were too strong to be defeated." Chloe watched from the side, but Ethan held her hand tightly. "Isabella," he said, his tone polite but icy, "I don't recall inviting you." "Oh, Ethan, after everything we've been through." "Everything we've been through?" Ethan laughed. "You mean your plan to let me die so you could run off with my money?" A collective gasp went through the crowd. Isabella's face turned white. "How dare you? How dare I?" "I dare because I survived. Because I found true love. Because I learned the difference between real gold and cheap plating." He turned to the assembled crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I invited you all for a specific reason. I wanted you to see exactly where you stand in my life." Ethan walked to the center of the ballroom, Chloe by his side. "When I was dying, only 2 people besides Chloe visited me consistently, Chris and Mark. They are my true friends. The rest of you," he paused dramatically, "you are just acquaintances I mistook for friends." Uncomfortable murmurs filled the room, but I'm not here to point fingers. I'm here to announce my engagement to the woman who saved my life in every way that matters. Chloe Davis, whom many of you knew as my nurse, will be my wife. He turned to Chloe, who wore an elegant sapphire blue dress he had insisted on buying for her. "This woman taught me what unconditional love is. She cleaned my tears and preserved my dignity when I was nothing but a broken body in a bed. She fought for me when I had given up on myself. She is the reason I am standing here today." Then Ethan knelt again, this time in front of everyone, and repeated his proposal. The room erupted in applause, some genuine, much of it forced, and a great deal of it bitter. Eleanor, his mother, pushed through the crowd, her face red with rage. "This is absurd! You're throwing your life away on a gold digger?" "A gold digger?" Ethan laughed. "Mother, she loved me when everyone thought I had weeks to live, when there was no fortune to dig, just a dying man to care for. She manipulated you." "No, Mother, you tried to manipulate me. You tried to get me to sign over my assets while I was in agony. Chloe never asked me for anything except to fight for my own life." The wedding took place 3 months later. It was an intimate ceremony in the mansion's garden, with only their true friends and Chloe's family in attendance. Chloe's mother, Sarah, wept openly, having finally accepted that her daughter's love was real and powerful. Ethan had regained almost all of his mobility. He still used a cane on occasion, but doctors deemed his recovery an unexplainable medical miracle. During their vows, Ethan said, "Chloe, you taught me that miracles don't come from the heavens. They come from a stubborn love that refuses to accept the impossible. You are my miracle." Chloe, radiant in her simple but elegant wedding dress, replied, "Ethan, you taught me that true love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to stay when it's easier to leave. It's about seeing the light when everyone else sees only darkness. You say I saved you, but the truth is we saved each other." As they kissed, rose petals rained down from the sky, courtesy of Chris and Mark, who had hired a helicopter for the occasion. Their honeymoon was in Santorini, fulfilling Chloe's dream. Sitting on the terrace of a white villa with a blue roof, watching the sunset over the Aegean Sea, Ethan held his wife's hand. "You were right," Chloe said. "The pictures really don't do it justice." "You were right, too," Ethan replied. "About what?" "Miracles happen." 3 years later, in the same room where Chloe had once cared for a dying Ethan, their daughter, Sophia, was born. As the nurse placed the baby in Ethan's arms, he wept, this time with pure joy. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's our miracle," Chloe replied, watching her husband and daughter, her heart overflowing. Ethan had returned to his business, but with a completely new perspective. He established a foundation dedicated to funding research for degenerative diseases and supporting affected families. Chloe finally fulfilled her dream and went to medical school specializing in neurology. Isabella ended up marrying an older, wealthy tycoon who eventually discovered her true nature. She lives a life of hollow appearances, forever chasing the next fortune. Eleanor tried to reconcile when Sophia was born, but Ethan kept her at a distance. "You may see your granddaughter," he told her, "but you will never have influence over her." One Sunday afternoon, as the family had a picnic in the garden, now including 1-year-old Ethan Jr., Chris remarked, "You know, I still can't believe how this all turned out. It's like a fairy tale." Ethan watched Chloe playing with their children, her face lit up by sunlight and love. "It's not a fairy tale," he said. "Fairy tales are fantasy. This is real. This is what happens when true love meets a soul that refuses to give up." "Do you really think it was her love that cured you?" Mark asked. Ethan thought for a moment. "The doctors have their theories. Spontaneous remission, a misdiagnosis, who knows? But I know the truth. When you have someone who refuses to let you die, who fights for your every breath as if it were their own, who sees the person in you that you can no longer see, it changes something fundamental inside you. Maybe it's not scientific, but it's real." Chloe walked over, holding Sophia's hand and carrying Ethan Jr. on her hip. "What are you guys talking about?" "Miracles," Ethan answered, pulling her in for a kiss. "Ew." Sophia protested, making them all laugh. As the sun set over the mansion that had witnessed so much pain and now overflowed with joy, Ethan reflected on his journey. The disease that was supposed to kill him had, in fact, given him life. The woman who came to care for his dying body had ended up healing his soul. And somewhere, perhaps, the universe smiled, satisfied with its work in bringing together two souls who needed each other to discover that true love knows no boundaries, not those set by medicine, by society, or even by fate itself. The story of Ethan and Chloe became a legend at the hospital where he was treated. Doctors still study his case, searching for scientific explanations. But the nurses, especially those in palliative care, know the truth. Sometimes love is the most powerful medicine of all. And so, the man who had everything and lost it all finally gained the one thing that truly mattered. And the woman who came only to care discovered that sometimes caring for someone is the purest way to love. Their story continues, a living testament that the greatest miracles aren't those that defy science, but those that happen when two hearts choose to fight together against the impossible and win. YouTube outro, call to action. Music swells and then softens. Dear friends, we hope the story of Ethan and Chloe has touched your hearts as deeply as it has ours. This epic journey reminds us that in a world often ruled by superficiality and greed, compassion and true love are the most miraculous forces of all. The love that bloomed between a man who had lost everything and the caregiver who refused to give up on him not only brought two hearts together, but challenged medicine itself, proving that true worth lies in character, not in a bank account. May Ethan and Chloe's journey inspire all of us to face adversity with hope, and to never let a diagnosis define our destiny. Share in the comments what Ethan and Chloe's story taught you most about love, resilience, and the power of hope. Use this space to share your thoughts, suggest our next story, and connect with us. The most fascinating ideas might just become our next video. Until next time, with more stories that warm the soul and make us believe in the unbreakable power of compassion.